Good day. Today I'm going to be reviewing the final installment of the Ciaphas Cain Omnibus, entitled Traitor's Hand. Now, Traitor's Hand is quite possibly the second best novel in the Ciaphas Cain series, and that's mainly due to its many memorable moments, such as the battle against the Chaos Space Marine, and finally the final boss fight with the Demon. So imagine going up against one of the most powerful creatures ever to walk the mortal realm, with nothing more than a chainsword and a laser pistol. Now that certainly takes some testicular fortitude right there. Now in this novel, Cain and his regiment are called to a planet in order to prepare for an assault by Chaos forces. Essentially, the Chaos Gods, as they're called, are a number of Q-like entities that have various human followers do battle in their name. Essentially, they're all insane, and they all want to really take down the current human government and instill a really bad government, something that would make Stalin's Russia look good. So let's just cut all of this and crack this thing open and take a look at Traitor's Hand.
They decided to bring back the chapter quotes, and by and large, they are far superior to the ones in For the Emperor, like this one. The wider he smiled and called us friend, the tighter we clung to our purses. Quite good, I have to say. The novel begins on a troop ship, wherein Commissar Cain meets someone from his past, a little Igrob named Thomas Behe, who is one of those individuals whom both Cain hates and the rest of the sentient populace. He's one of those people that's completely incompetent, but yet is filled with self-righteous zeal, and so therefore thinks he's better than everyone else. Luckily, before the conversation can continue on any longer, Castine rescues Commissar Cain. This little rescue shows just how close Commissar Cain is to the rest of the regiment. In most Imperial Guard regiments, commissars are a nuisance at best and completely dangerous at worst. And it goes to show just how good of a person that Commissar Cain really is. He's one of the few people in the Imperium that actually uses his brain. So, his unpleasant encounter now over, Cain sits in on a briefing for the next campaign. Essentially, Cain, his regiment, and a number of others are being sent to a planet in order to bolster its defenses against a Chaos invasion. Unfortunately, the number of regiments being sent are not necessarily enough, but they are going to get reinforcements. Eventually. Warp travel is fairly finicky. They might show up 3 days from now or 3,000 years from now. It's just sort of hit or miss with those sort of things. And so the journey to the planet continues. Now, a number of military regiments on one single ship will invariably socialize. They do this by organizing fighting tournaments between the various regiments. Sort of like Street Fighter, I suppose, except they're fighting in the corridors of a starship and not in a street. The only regiment that does not participate are the Talorans. They are also the same regiment that Behe is a commissar in. The Taloran commander regards these fighting tournaments as unseemly, due to the fact that there were some women participating in it. And that doesn't really work out too well because their regimental champion ends up being informally challenged by a woman named Majou. Upon that diversion's conclusion, the troop ship continued its slow and inexorable crawl to the next theater of war, and everything went along fairly smoothly, until it came time to land, whereupon one of the spaceports came under attack from a heretical band. Essentially, a heretic in this sense is anyone who actually worships chaos. So, they're generally hostile to just about anyone but themselves, and it makes for a fairly hot landing. The chapter quote here is fairly humorous. Incoming fire has the right of way, which is extremely true. Now, when they land, they can't actually land at the spaceport. Instead, they divert to a small gardening area. It is from here that the troops disembark to engage the heretic forces at the spaceport.
Come on! We've got to get to the spaceport!
The disembarkation goes as planned, and they move forth to render aid. Now, there are 4 Chaos Gods. Essentially, like I said earlier, they're Q-like entities. So you've got Nurgle, which is the god of decay. Essentially, all of their followers are diseased creatures. And then there's Tzech, which is the god of change. Followers of that particular entity are a little bit more intelligent than the others. And then there's Korn, who is the god of war. Its followers generally just shout out the words, "Blood for the blood god," run forward quickly, and get slaughtered in mass. And then, of course, there is Slanesh, the god that makes an appearance in this one, who is essentially the god of pleasure. The pleasure in question being the fatal variety. Essentially, they love pain, and they actually like being killed, which would be kind of detrimental if you actually want to win any battles. Overall, the majority of the Chaos Soldiers have all the collected intelligence of the robot from Berserk.
Let the body sit the flow. Let the body sit the flow. Let the body sit the Let the body sit the flow. Let the body sit the flow. Let the body sit the
You would imagine anyone who worships an extraplanar god would indeed be completely insane. And these are no exception. Now, most of the time, they just end up getting in their own way and end up killing themselves more than actually the enemy soldiers. At the cessation of hostilities, the Valhallans have incurred 0 casualties. The only problem is that Chaos forces generally attack en masse. If you've got 100,000 soldiers and they've got 6 million, well, attrition does indeed win out. Upon the battle's conclusion, everything quiets down for a little while up until Cain has to meet the Lord General and several high-ranking officials. As befitting their status, they have their meeting at the top of a really tall building. And this is generally a safe place up until an air car smashes through the window. It was an open-topped model, I noted absently, its body filigree with gold accoutrements that were mangled beyond repair due to the collision with the side of the hotel. The driver slumped over the brass handle of the grab regulator as I shot him through the head, and it made a real mess of the elaborate coiffure. And then his front seat passenger bounded over the wreckage and brandished his bolter. Bolter Boy then brought up his weapon smoothly, as though he was wearing power armor. I responded by putting a las bolt into his chest, which obliterated a tattoo which made my eyes hurt. I expected him to drop, but he kept coming, giggling insanely. I then yelled, "Frack this!" and dropped and rolled under the stream of explosive projectiles. The incoming fire ceased abruptly, as 2 bolt pistols joined the melee. The man with the bolter seemed to explode, and sprayed bloody offal around the room. I bade my thanks, and drew my chainsword and charged the other passengers. I sidestepped a woman clad only in a leather mask, and kicked her in the back of the knee just before she could open fire on the Lord General. I could spare her no more attention as I suddenly came under assault by a man that was as heavily muscled as a catch-hand. He brandished a powerball, but I took his hand off the wrist. Luckily, the powerball kept going and popped the head of the woman I had just kicked, then sliced in half a willowy youth of indeterminate gender that now left one last target, the muscle man, by easily dispatched by surgically removing his head. While the main combat might be over, their overall ordeal is not over just yet, because the air car was rigged to explode. Get me a tech priest, now!
I am Cogitator Ecumenides.
I have a bomb here and I need you to tell me how to disarm it.
The mystery of the machine god cannot be lightly revealed to the introns of God.
Unless you want to explain that to him yourself, you'll tell me how to disarm this bloody thing.
It should be simple, just cut the red wires.
They're all purple.
Just use your best judgment.
I don't have any! I'm a commissar, not a cowboy! Frack this. Ha!